The day my daughter-in-law, Chloe, looked me dead in the eye and told me I was no longer allowed to hold my newborn grandson without wearing medical gloves, something inside me broke. We were standing in the nursery of their lovely suburban home just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. I had driven 2 hours with a trunk full of homemade meals, ready to help them transition into parenthood. Instead, I was treated like a walking biohazard in front of my own son, Austin. I'm an elementary school secretary, so I understand hygiene and boundaries. But this wasn't about germs. This was about control. When I looked at Austin, hoping he'd say something, he just stared at the floor, adjusting his glasses. He looked so incredibly exhausted. "Mom, Chloe just wants to be safe," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. I swallowed the lump in my throat and put on the gloves. I didn't want to cause a scene on their first week home. But holding little Liam through layers of blue latex felt cold. It felt wrong. I looked at Chloe, expecting to see a stressed, anxious new mom. Instead, she had this faint, satisfied smile on her face as she scrolled through her phone. That was the moment I realized my relationship with my only son had officially entered dangerous territory. If you've ever had to walk on eggshells around your own children just to see your grandkids, let me know in the comments how you handled it, because I was completely lost. Growing up, Austin and I were incredibly close. I raised him as a single mother after his father passed away, and we had an unbreakable bond. He went to college, became a successful accountant, and met Chloe at a marketing seminar. When he first brought her home, I was thrilled. She was sharp, beautiful, and clearly ambitious. But looking back, the red flags were there from the very beginning. She never liked it when Austin and I shared inside jokes from his childhood. During their engagement, she slowly started managing his schedule, tracking his location, and picking his clothes. I told myself she was just organized. I wanted so badly to be the supportive, loving mother-in-law you see in movies, not the nightmare version everyone complains about. So, I stepped back. I gave them space. When they got married, I helped pay for the rehearsal dinner and stayed out of the planning. But giving Chloe an inch only made her take a mile. The subtle snubs started small, like accidentally forgetting to invite me to family Sunday dinners, or changing the venue of Thanksgiving at the last minute without telling me. When Chloe got pregnant, I thought everything would change. I thought a baby would bring us together. I spent months knitting blankets, buying a crib for my house, and dreaming of the moments we'd share. Instead, the isolation became aggressive. First, she banned me from the baby shower, claiming it was an intimate friends-only event, even though her own mother and aunts flew in from Dallas. Then came the strict list of rules sent via email a month before the due date. No unannounced visits, no gifts that weren't on the registry, and no kissing the baby. I agreed to all of it because I loved my son and wanted to respect their choices. But the medical gloves rule wasn't on that list. It was invented on the spot, the moment she saw how happy I was to hold Liam. Later that evening, after Chloe went upstairs to nap, I finally got Austin alone in the kitchen. I was washing the dinner dishes, trying to keep my hands from shaking. "Austin," I said softly, keeping my voice low. "Is everything okay?" "The gloves, it feels a bit extreme, don't you think?" Austin sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mom, please don't start. Chloe reads a lot of parenting blogs. She's just protective." "I raised you, honey," I said, turning to face him. I know how to care for a baby. It feels like she's trying to keep me away from him. Before Austin could answer, the kitchen door swung open. Chloe was standing there, her eyes flashing with a cold intensity that chilled me to the bone. She had heard everything. But what she said next took my breath away. If you have a problem with how we run our household, Sarah, nobody is forcing you to stay, Chloe said, her voice dropping to a sharp, icy whisper. I froze, a dish towel gripped tightly in my hands. I looked at my son, expecting him to defend me, or at least diffuse the situation. But Austin just stared down at the kitchen island, tracking the grain of the wood with his thumb. He looked completely defeated, like a man who had already lost too many battles at home and didn't have the energy for another one. Chloe, I was just asking a question, I said, trying to keep my voice as calm and mature as possible. I love you both, and I love Liam. I'm just trying to understand. What's to understand? She snapped, crossing her arms. You're questioning my parenting in my own house. Austin, tell her. Austin looked up, his eyes pleading with me. Mom, maybe it's best if you head back to Charlotte tonight. We're just really stressed and tired. It was only 8 o'clock in the evening. The drive back was 2 hours down a dark highway, and I had packed a suitcase intending to stay the weekend to help them cook and clean. My heart squeezed so hard it physically hurt. My own son was kicking me out because he was too afraid of his wife's temper. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I quietly packed my bags, kissed the top of little Liam's head, with my bare lips, because I couldn't help myself, and walked out to my car. The drive home was a blur of tears. If you've ever had your heart broken by your own child, you know exactly the kind of hollow, empty ache I felt in my chest that night. I didn't sleep a wink. For the next 3 months, the silence was deafening. I sent text messages asking how the baby was doing, but I only received short, one-word answers from Austin. Chloe completely blocked me on social media, so I couldn't even see pictures of my grandson growing up. Whenever I called Austin, he'd pick up, speak in a rushed, hushed tone, and say he had to go because Chloe needed him. I felt like I was mourning a son who was still alive. Then, out of nowhere, around mid-October, Austin called me from his office line during his lunch break. His voice sounded different, anxious, frantic, and entirely overwhelmed. Mom, he gasped out, trying to keep his composure. I need a huge favor. Chloe's mother was supposed to come watch Liam this weekend because we both have mandatory corporate conferences, but her flight got canceled out of Dallas. Chloe is losing her mind. Can you please come down and watch him? My heart leaped. Despite all the pain and the isolation, the thought of holding my grandson and helping my son overrode any pride I had left. Of course, honey, I said instantly. I'll take Friday off work. I'll be there. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. But listen. Austin hesitated, his voice dropping low. Chloe has a whole new list of rules for the weekend. I'm going to email them to you. Please, just follow them to the letter. I can't take another week of fighting. I agreed, eager to bridge the gap. When the email arrived, it was 3 pages long. It detailed everything from the exact temperature of the nursery to the specific brand of organic dish soap I had to use on Liam's bottles. It was controlling, yes, but I was determined to be perfect. When I arrived at their house that Friday morning, Chloe didn't even say hello. She handed me the baby, handed me a printed copy of the rules, and walked out the door with her suitcase, Austin trailing quietly behind her. The weekend with Liam was pure heaven. He smiled at me for the first time, a beautiful, gummy smile that melted all my sadness away. I kept that house spotless. I followed every single rule on Chloe's list, ticking them off one by one. I wanted to prove to her, once and for all, that I was on her team. By Sunday afternoon, I was folding a final load of baby laundry in their living room while Liam napped. Austin and Chloe were due back in an hour. As I reached into the dryer, my hand brushed against something hard in the pocket of one of Austin's corporate jackets. I pulled it out, assuming it was a thumb drive or a pack of mints. It wasn't. It was a brand new, voice-activated digital recorder, and it was switched to the on position. That's when I realized this entire weekend hadn't been a favor at all. It was a trap. My hand shook as I stared at the sleek little device lying in the palm of my hand. The tiny green light was blinking, silently capturing the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the soft breathing of my grandson in the next room. Chloe hadn't just left me a list of rules. She had left an electronic spy to see if I would break them. I felt a wave of hot shame wash over me, followed immediately by a cold, clear realization. This wasn't about protecting Liam from germs or making sure he stuck to a schedule. Chloe was actively looking for a reason to banish me from their lives permanently. She wanted me to slip up, to say something negative about her to the baby, or to violate one of her strict protocols so she could present the evidence to Austin and say, "See? Your mother can't be trusted." If you're watching this and wondering how someone could be that calculating, I'm right there with you. I stood in that beautifully decorated living room, feeling entirely violated in my own son's home. I set the recorder down on the kitchen island. My first instinct was to turn it off, pack my things, and leave before they got back. But I knew that if I fled, Chloe would spin the narrative. She would tell Austin I threw a tantrum and abandoned their baby. I had to be smarter than that. I had to remain the emotionally mature adult I had always tried to be. I left the recorder exactly where it was, still running. I finished folding the baby laundry, stacked it neatly in Liam's closet, and sat down on the sofa with a book. I didn't say a word out loud. I didn't mutter to myself. I gave that little device absolutely nothing but the sound of peace, order, and meticulous care. At 4 o'clock, the garage door rumbled open. Austin and Chloe walked through the front door, looking exhausted from their weekend at the conference. "Hi, guys," I said, rising from the couch with a warm smile. "Welcome back. Liam is still napping. He's had a wonderful weekend. He ate all his bottles right on schedule, and I logged everything in the notebook." Austin looked visibly relieved. "Thanks, Mom. Seriously. You have no idea how much we appreciate this." Chloe didn't say a word. Her eyes immediately darted to the kitchen island, then to the laundry basket, and finally to the living room. She looked almost disappointed by how immaculate the house was. She walked straight into the kitchen, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw her casually slide the digital recorder into her purse. She didn't think I had noticed. "Well, everything is taken care of, so I'll get out of your hair and head back to Charlotte," I said, picking up my purse and my coat. "Are you sure you don't want to stay for dinner, Mom?" Austin asked, stepping forward. We could order some Thai. Before I could answer, Chloe cleared her throat loudly. Austin, we have a ton of unpacking to do, and we need to get Liam back on his routine with just us. Sarah's probably tired anyway. The dismissal was polite on the surface, but lethal underneath. Chloe's right, honey, I said, looking Austin directly in the eyes. I'll head out. I love you. I drove home that night with a heavy heart, but also with a new sense of clarity. The innocence of my relationship with my son's new family was gone. I was no longer dealing with a stressed new mother. I was dealing with a woman who viewed me as an enemy to be defeated. 2 weeks later, the other shoe finally dropped. I was at my desk at the school when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Austin. Mom, we need to talk. It's urgent. Can I come over after work tomorrow? Alone. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what was coming. Chloe had finally found what she was looking for, or worse, she had manufactured it. But what I didn't expect was the absolute storm Austin was about to walk into when he reached my front door. When Austin arrived at my house the next evening, he didn't look like the confident, successful accountant I knew. He looked pale, hollow, and decades older than his 32 years. He wouldn't even meet my eyes as I opened the door. Hi, honey, I said, stepping aside. Come on in. I made some coffee. I can't stay long, Mom, he said, his voice flat and strained. He walked into my living room but refused to sit down. He stood by the fireplace, his arms tightly crossed over his chest. All right, I said, setting my coffee mug down on the coffee table. What's going on? Your text sounded incredibly serious. Austin took a deep breath, and when he finally looked up, I saw tears welling in his eyes. But mixed with the sadness was a strange, misplaced anger. Mom, why couldn't you just follow the rules? Why did you have to push things? I kept my voice calm. Austin, I followed every single rule on Chloe's list. I checked them off one by one. Don't lie to me, Mom. Please, he suddenly burst out, his voice cracking. Chloe found it. She checked the nursery camera log from the weekend you watched Liam. You went into our master bedroom while we were gone, didn't you? You went through our private financial documents on the desk. Chloe found the papers shuffled around. I stared at him, completely stunned. The accusation was so specific, yet so completely fabricated. I hadn't set a single foot inside their master bedroom the entire weekend. I had slept on the pull-out couch in the den, just like Chloe had instructed. Austin, I said, my voice dropping to a steady, deliberate whisper. I never went into your bedroom. I have absolutely no interest in your financial documents. She has proof, Mom. Austin yelled, his hands shaking. She said the motion sensors on the security app showed activity upstairs while Liam was napping on Saturday afternoon. She's hysterical. She says she feels violated. She told me that if I don't cut you off completely, she's taking Liam and moving back to Dallas. She's giving me an ultimatum, Mom. I can't lose my son. He collapsed onto my sofa, burying his face in his hands, sobbing uncontrollably. My heart broke into a million pieces for him. He was being completely gaslit and emotionally terrorized by the woman he loved. She had backed him into a corner, using his love for his child as a weapon to sever his last tie to his mother. If you have ever watched someone you love be manipulated like this, you know the absolute agony of having to stay calm when you want to scream. I sat down on the coffee table across from him. I didn't get angry. I didn't defend myself aggressively. "Austin, look at me," I said softly. He lifted his tear-stained face. "I did not go into your room," I said, looking directly into his soul. "But I think it's time you and I have a very honest conversation about what actually happened that weekend." Because Chloe didn't just rely on security apps. I reached into my purse, pulled out my notebook, and opened it to the page where I had written down the serial number and brand of the digital voice recorder I had found in his jacket pocket. "Do you know what this is, Austin?" I asked, showing him the note. He blinked, wiping his eyes. That's my old work dictator. Chloe asked to borrow it a few weeks ago for a marketing focus group." "She didn't use it for a focus group," I said quietly. "She left it switched on, hidden in your jacket pocket in the laundry room, to spy on me. I found it on Sunday afternoon." Austin's breath caught in his throat. He stared at the note, his face draining of what little color it had left. But that wasn't the realization that changed everything. That was just the beginning. She did what?" Austin whispered, his voice trembling as he stared at the serial number written in my neat handwriting. "She left it in your jacket," I repeated gently. "I found it when I went to clear the dryer. It was running the entire time. Austin, I didn't turn it off. I didn't say a word. I left it exactly where it was because I realized she was testing me." Austin shook his head, frantically trying to piece the timeline together in his mind. No. That doesn't make sense. If she had a recording, why would she lie about the motion sensors upstairs? Why would she make up the financial papers? "Because the recording didn't give her what she wanted," I said, the painful truth hanging heavily in the air between us. "The recording proved that I was quiet, that I was respectful, and that I followed every single rule she laid out. It didn't give her a reason to banish me. So, she had to invent one." Austin sat frozen on my sofa. The silence in my living room was deafening. I could practically see the gears turning in his head as years of subtle manipulations, quiet exclusions, and strange arguments suddenly aligned into a horrific, undeniable picture. "She told me she deleted the focus group files because they were corrupted," Austin muttered, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and betrayal. "She told me the recorder was broken." "It's not broken, honey," I said softly, placing a hand over his shaking fingers. "She just couldn't let you hear it." For the first time in years, the defensive wall Austin had built up around his wife completely crumbled. He wasn't looking at me like a defensive husband anymore. He was looking at me like my son again. He was terrified, confused, and deeply hurt. "Mom, what am I supposed to do?" he choked out, a solitary tear spilling over his eyelashes. "If I confront her, she'll just deny it. She'll say you're lying to tear us apart. She always turns it back on me. I feel like I'm losing my mind." I took a deep breath, knowing that the next move had to be handled with absolute precision. If we handled this poorly, Chloe would double down, pack her bags, and alienate Austin from his son forever. We needed undeniable, concrete proof, not just of her innocence or guilt, but of the trap she had deliberately set. "Austin," I said, keeping my voice steady and grounded. "Where is the home security hub connected? Is it on your phone or hers?" Both, he said, wiping his face. But she manages the master account. She changes the passwords every few months for security reasons. Can you log in right now? He pulled out his phone, his fingers tapping against the screen. He tried his usual password. It failed. He tried a variation of Chloe's birthday. It failed. His face grew increasingly pale. She changed it, he whispered, staring at the login error screen. She changed the admin password yesterday. Right before she told me I had to come over here and cut you off. A cold chill ran down my spine. She hadn't just lied, she had locked him out of the loop entirely to prevent him from checking her story. She was completely controlling the narrative, making sure he had no choice but to believe her version of reality. It's okay, I said, maintaining my composure. We don't need the app. Because there's one detail Chloe forgot about that weekend. Austin looked up, a flicker of hope in his exhausted eyes. What? The neighborhood gate logs, I said. But what we found in those logs was something neither of us ever anticipated. The neighborhood gate logs? Austin repeated, his brow furrowing. Mom, how does the neighborhood gate help us? You were inside the house all weekend. I was, I said calmly. But remember, their neighborhood has a private, manned security gate that logs the license plate and timestamp of every single vehicle that enters, even residents using the barcode lane. And on Saturday afternoon, while Liam was napping, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I assumed it was a delivery driver, so I didn't think much of it at the time. But now, it makes perfect sense. Austin's eyes widened. You think someone else was there? I think Chloe came back, I said, the realization hardening inside me. I think she slipped away from her conference early on Saturday afternoon, used her key to walk into the house while I was downstairs in the den with the door closed, went upstairs to mess up her own financial papers, and then drove right back to the conference center. She needed to create physical evidence of a break-in that the security cameras wouldn't catch, or that she could easily delete from her phone later. Austin looked like he had been struck by lightning. She wouldn't do that. Mom, that's insane. She wouldn't drive an hour back from the conference just to frame you. There's only one way to find out, I told him gently. You're a resident on the HOA account. Call the front gate security office. Ask them to pull the vehicle entry logs for your household from this past Saturday between 1 and 4 o'clock. If you've ever had to watch someone uncover a truth that will alter their life forever, you know how heavy that silence feels. Austin's hands shook so badly he almost dropped his phone. He stepped out onto my back porch to make the call, his voice low and trembling as he spoke to the guard on duty. I watched him through the kitchen window. For 10 minutes, he just listened, nodding slowly, his shoulders slumping lower and lower until he looked completely crushed. When he walked back inside, he didn't say a word. He just turned his phone screen toward me. The security guard had texted him a screenshot of the digital gate log. There, clearly printed under Saturday at 2:14 p.m., was the license plate number for Chloe's white SUV. She had entered the neighborhood, stayed for exactly 20 minutes, and left. The conference she was supposedly trapped at all weekend was an hour away in downtown Charlotte. She had lied about everything. Austin sank into a kitchen chair, burying his face in his hands. This time, his tears weren't frantic or angry. They were quiet, heavy, and full of deep, agonizing grief. The illusion of his marriage had been completely shattered. She lied to me, he whispered into his hands. She manipulated me into throwing my own mother out of my house. She threatened to take my son away based on a lie she manufactured. How can I ever look at her the same way again, Mom? I walked over and wrapped my arms tightly around his shoulders. I don't know, honey, I whispered, holding him just like I used to when he was a little boy. But you aren't alone anymore. We know the truth. I have to go home, Austin said after a long time, wiping his face and standing up with a newfound, cold determination in his eyes. I have to confront her. Not alone, I said firmly, grabbing my keys off the counter. I'm coming with you. But as we drove back to their house in the dark, I knew that confronting a master manipulator like Chloe wasn't going to be easy. We had the gate log, but we still didn't know just how far she was willing to go to protect her narrative. The drive back to their suburban home was completely silent. Austin kept his hands gripped tight on the steering wheel at the 10-2 position, his knuckles turning white under the glow of the dashboard lights. I sat in the passenger seat, my heart hammering against my ribs, praying for the strength to remain calm. I couldn't lose my temper. I had to let the truth do the heavy lifting. When we pulled into the driveway, the house looked peaceful from the outside. The warm porch lights were on, casting a gentle glow over the manicured lawn. It looked like the picture-perfect American dream. But I knew that inside, a storm was waiting. Mom, let me talk first, Austin said, his voice flat as he turned off the ignition. Just stand by me. I'm right here, honey, I said. We walked through the front door. Chloe was sitting on the living room sofa, a glass of white wine in her hand, watching a reality television show. When she saw me walk in behind Austin, her face instantly hardened. She set her glass down on the coffee table with a sharp clink and stood up, her arms crossed tight. Austin, what is she doing here? Chloe asked, her voice dripping with venom. I thought we had an agreement. I told you I didn't want her in this house after what she did. She didn't do anything, Chloe, Austin said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had a heavy, unyielding weight to it that I had never heard before. Chloe scoffed, looking at him like he was a child who didn't understand a math problem. Oh, please. Don't tell me you fell for her sob story again. I told you, the security app showed. The security app showed someone upstairs because you were upstairs, Austin interrupted, stepping forward. Chloe blinked, a brief flicker of hesitation crossing her features before she quickly masked it with an expression of pure outrage. What are you talking about? I was at the conference all day Saturday. You were sitting right next to me in the seminars. Not during the afternoon break, Austin said. He pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and set it flat on the kitchen island between them. The screenshot of the neighborhood gate log was glaringly bright. You drove back. You entered the gate at 2:14 p.m. You used your key, went upstairs, messed up the papers on the desk to frame my mother, and then you drove back before the evening dinner. Chloe stared at the phone screen. For a few agonizing seconds, the room was so quiet you could hear the digital clock ticking on the microwave. I watched the color slowly drain from her face, her confident posture rigidifying into sheer panic. But a master manipulator doesn't give up easily. She forced a laugh, though it sounded incredibly strained. Austin, this is ridiculous. That's a mistake. The guard must have typed the plate in wrong. You're going to believe a lazy security guard over your own wife? Over the mother of your child? Stop it, Chloe. Austin finally snapped, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. Just stop lying. I called the front gate. The guard didn't type it in. It was an automatic barcode scan linked directly to your vehicle's transponder. They have video footage of your car pulling up. Do you want me to ask them to email the video too? The final piece of her defense completely collapsed. Chloe's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She looked at Austin, then turned her icy gaze to me, realizing that her carefully constructed trap had completely backfired. If you've ever witnessed the exact moment a toxic person realizes they've been caught in a definitive lie, you know how quickly their demeanor changes from arrogance to sheer desperation. Austin, baby, listen to me, Chloe whispered, her voice suddenly cracking as she stepped toward him, reaching for his hands. I only did it because I was desperate. I felt so crowded. She's always trying to interfere, always judging me. She followed every single one of your insane rules. Austin shouted, pulling his hands away from her grip. She even let you spy on her with my digital recorder, and she didn't say a single negative word. You tried to destroy my relationship with my mother based on a malicious lie. You weaponized our son to force my hand. I did it for our family. Chloe cried, tears finally streaming down her face, though they felt entirely performative. No, you did it for control, Austin said coldly. He turned away from her, walking toward the stairs. I'm going up to check on Liam. Don't follow me. Mom, please come with me. As I followed my son up the stairs, Chloe screamed my name from the bottom of the steps, her voice raw with an ugly, bitter rage. But I didn't look back. I kept my eyes on my son's back, knowing that while the truth had set us free, the hardest part of the healing process was about to begin. We spent the rest of that night in the nursery, taking turns rocking little Liam. Austin held his son for a long time, just staring down at him in the dim light of the amber nightlight. Every now and then, a quiet sob would escape his chest. I didn't push him to talk. I didn't say, I told you so. I just sat in the armchair across from him, offering the steady, silent presence he needed. Downstairs, we heard the slammed doors and the muffled pacing of Chloe pack her things. By midnight, the garage door rumbled open, and her SUV pulled out into the night. She had gone to stay at a hotel downtown, unable to face the reality of what she had done. The next morning, Austin asked me to stay for the week to help him with the baby while he sorted through the legal and emotional wreckage. It was a grueling few days. There were frantic phone calls from Chloe's mother in Dallas, attempts at hollow apologies from Chloe via text, and long, painful conversations between Austin and a family attorney. But through all the chaos, a strange sense of peace settled over the house. The thick, heavy tension that had existed for years was finally gone. I feel like I've been asleep for 5 years, Mom, Austin told me on Thursday evening as we sat on the back porch, watching the sunset over the Carolina pines. I was so focused on keeping the peace, so terrified of making her angry, that I didn't even realize I was letting her erase who I was. And I almost let her erase you. You were trying to protect your son, Austin, I said gently, setting my coffee cup down. A good father will do anything for his child. Chloe knew that, and she used it against you. That is not your fault. He looked at me, his eyes clear and focused for the first time in a very long time. "It stops now. I'm filing for legal separation, Mom. We're going to mediation, and I'm fighting for joint custody. I want Liam to grow up knowing what a real, loving family looks like. I want him to know his grandmother." Hearing those words felt like water washing over a parched desert. The dignity and respect that had been stripped away from me over the last 2 years was instantly restored. Not because I had won a fight, but because my son had finally chosen truth over manipulation. Over the next year, the road wasn't easy. Mediation was tense, and Chloe fought hard to maintain control, but the concrete evidence of her deception kept her from pulling any more extreme stunts. Eventually, a strict, court-ordered custody agreement was signed. Austin moved into a smaller, cozier house closer to Charlotte, just 15 minutes away from my school. Now, every Tuesday and Friday, I get to pick Liam up from daycare. There are no blue latex gloves. There are no 3-page lists of arbitrary rules. There are just warm hugs, messy finger paints on my kitchen table, and the sound of a little boy's laughter echoing through my home. If you've stuck with me through this entire journey, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you're currently in the middle of a painful family conflict, please subscribe for more real-life stories of hope, and remember this one thing. You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Protecting your peace and standing firmly in the truth isn't selfish. It is the only way to survive. Trust your instincts, be patient, and know that love, real, genuine, unconditional love, will always find its way back to you in the end.